where I spent most of my nights, the concrete floor. It wasn't hard in the sense like to sleep out here, you know. It was just hard to know that I didn't have a home and loving people to go home to. I think that was the hardest part, you know.
The cold cement floor is where the head rests, and the pain of homelessness is what torments the soul. There's no way out for the homeless, those fragile lives still clinging desperately to the last remnants of hope.
Homelessness is real. That's what it is.
Let the press stay! Let the press stay! Let the press stay!
Los Angeles, the dazzling glow of cinema, the lively streets of Hollywood, the towering skyscrapers and neon signs lighting up entire blocks, seems to embody every symbol of success, ambition, and modern life. This city, with a massive GDP that surpasses that of many nations, appears to sit at the very peak of prosperity, a true city of lights, where anything can happen from blockbuster films to billion-dollar startups. Yet beneath that brilliance, another reality, harsh and deeply heartbreaking, continues to simmer weary people with nowhere to go, swallowed by the night, in a city that often looks past them. A different Los Angeles emerges underneath it, all rows of tents along the sidewalks, people lining up outside shelters that may or may not have a bed, quiet faces watching the traffic from a folding chair on the corner. How did we get to a point where a city this wealthy can call it a success to have only 72,000 people without stable housing?
People passed out or stumbling on the pavement.
To be fair, there has been movement. The city declared a state of emergency on homelessness, launched programs like Inside Safe, and for the first time in a long while, the official numbers have declined for 2 consecutive years. Yet declining does not mean things are all right, especially when the drop still equals the population of a small town, sleeping outdoors every night. And if these programs are merely patching holes, temporarily, are we fooling ourselves into believing this crisis is truly improving? Why is a city once considered the richest in America, a place where countless opportunities and prosperity have taken root, now carrying a homelessness crisis that has dragged on for years? And even after so many relief efforts, policies and support campaigns, why are tens of thousands of people still unable to find a home? This article aims to paint a full landscape from the small but real steps forward to the painful failures, from structural causes to policy gaps, and ultimately asks whether Los Angeles can truly awaken the shadows that remain and restore a sense of dignity and peace to the lives lost in the glow of this city of lights.
They know I was in the service, but they don't know what I did or when I did it or what happened, nothing like that. So I can't get any benefits from them at all, and I have no ID and no way to get anything.
Ever let those LASA numbers from the 2025 count settle over you? For the second straight year, homelessness edged down 4% countywide to 72, 308 lost souls, 3.4% in the city to 43,699 without a solid roof. Progress, yeah, a dim spark after the relentless climb. Unsheltered folks, those curled on sidewalks or under bridges, fell 7.9% in the city last year. And since Mayor Bass took the helm, that's a 17.5% plunge, the sharpest since counts began in '05. Still, it sticks in my craw, friend, that's more unhoused than all of Inglewood baking under that merciless LA sun or shivering in Pacific damp. How's a trim like that victory when the scar's been raw for generations? Peel back the stats, and they turn to faces, worn ones that twist your heart. Chronics make up 35% veterans of the streets their spirits etched deep. LASA even sheltered 162 more. This time, a nod that some wounds linger. Newcomers flood in rents, spiking 8% in Echo Park alone, shoving wage slaves and families onto the pavement. Over a quarter battle severe mental health demons, 20% fight addictions, and those vets hauling PTSD like lead weights, 6% of the tally, but a stain on our nation's soul. Elders in rags, single moms dodging dead ends with kids in tow, LGBTQ+ teens cast out for truth. It's a tapestry of muted agony, every thread begging mercy. And here's a barb that'll sting. We're dumping billions into shelters like endless pit stops when affordable homes up front could halt the slide. Isn't that the cruel twist-patching blisters while the rot of inequality festers unchecked? A RAND report this fall exposed it raw. LASA undercounted unsheltered by 32% in Skid Row, and Venice ghosting maybe 7,900 citywide. Sloppy nah, it's poison mist diverting Measure A's millions from the hardest hit blocks. We bank on bed availability feeds to guide the weary to cover. How do we follow a half-drawn map? Chew on that with your coffee, pal. Fuzzy counts don't just shortchange them, they betray the sun-scorched vow of this wide-open dream. Los Angeles has been pushing hard to change the trajectory of homelessness, and even though there's still plenty of debate, it's clear the city has made real progress. When Karen Bass took office and declared a state of emergency on day one, the goal was unmistakable: cut through slow procedures, speed up housing programs, and create a faster, more coordinated response to a crisis that has dragged on for years. The first results have started to show. According to the latest 2025 report, overall homelessness in the city has dropped by more than 3%, and the number of people sleeping outdoors has fallen by roughly 17% since Bass began her term. These numbers may not seem huge, but for people who spent night after night on bare concrete, they represent a meaningful shift. Part of this progress comes from Inside Safe, a program that moves people from encampments into hotel rooms and temporary housing. Many participants say they were able to sleep with the door locked for the first time in years, something that sounds simple, but is deeply tied to safety and dignity. Still, one question lingers if the model is working. Why are thousands of tents still lined up along freeways and riverbeds? Alongside Inside Safe, the city has been repurposing older buildings, schools, libraries, motels, turning them into shelter spaces. It's faster than building new structures, yet still not quick enough to keep pace with how many people fall into homelessness each month. Outreach workers have also reported data errors showing open beds that don't actually exist, making it impossible to place people as promised. That kind of inconsistency erodes trust that is already fragile. On top of that, federal funding is shrinking, and without replacement dollars, an additional 5,000, 7,000 households could slip into homelessness. This raises a difficult question. Are the recent gains truly sustainable? Or are they just a brief pause before the crisis rises again? In the end, Los Angeles is genuinely trying, but the gap between making progress and solving the problem remains wide. It's hard to look at homelessness in Los Angeles today without asking ourselves why this crisis keeps circling back year after year, almost as if the city is trapped in its own shadow. The truth is painful, and I say this as someone who has followed the Los Angeles homeless crisis for a long time. The roots run far deeper than tents on sidewalks or the Los Angeles homeless encampments that people drive past every morning. They stretch into the cost of living, into broken safety nets, and into the quiet struggles happening behind closed doors long before anyone ends up outside. For many residents, the journey toward homelessness begins with one simple, brutal fact: housing in Los Angeles is unbelievably expensive. Over the past few years, rents have climbed faster than wages, pushing thousands of working families to the edge. And when federal housing funds are expected to shrink, putting $5,000 to 7,000 households at risk, how do we pretend the problem is only happening out there to someone else? More importantly, how would any of us cope if one unexpected bill could cost us a roof? Yet rising rents aren't the only force at play. A growing number of people fall through the cracks because government social support simply doesn't arrive in time or arrives in pieces scattered across agencies that rarely speak to each other. Those battling addiction or mental health issues face an uphill climb. And yes, the spread of fentanyl has intensified the Los Angeles homeless drugs narrative, turning what was once a housing emergency into a broader public health crisis. But here's the controversial part. Addiction didn't cause homelessness for everyone. For many, homelessness came first, and drugs followed as a way to numb the cold, the fear and the shame no one likes to talk about. So we come back to the same unsettling question. How did a world-class city become a place where tens of thousands sleep outside night after night? Maybe the deeper issue isn't that people fail the system, but that the system fails them long before they ever hit the street. And until Los Angeles finds the courage to fix the structure, not just the symptoms, this painful loop will keep repeating. No one in Los Angeles fully agrees on the tiny homes solution, and the more I speak with older, long-time residents, the more I understand why the debate feels so heavy. Even though the city once hoped this model would quickly and humanely reduce Los Angeles homeless street conditions and shrink Los Angeles homeless camps, the latest reports tell a different, deeply troubling story. Several investigations in 2025 revealed that many tiny home sites deteriorated so quickly that residents chose to leave them leaking roofs, weak heating systems, and spaces too cramped to feel even remotely stable. An older man once told me, his voice shaky but sincere, "I know it's temporary, but sometimes it feels even more temporary than the sidewalk." I still think about that line. In truth, when cities try to address homelessness in Los Angeles, tiny homes accomplish only one thing: offering temporary shelter. But is that truly enough? When I look at the tired faces lining up each night, I find myself wondering, are we creating a real solution? Or are we just shrinking the problem so it's easier to look at? Meanwhile, advocacy groups warn that if federal housing support programs are reduced, especially rental assistance, another 5,000 to 7,000 households could fall into homelessness next year. This makes me ask myself again, how will we cope when even our most basic temporary shelters can't keep people from slipping back onto the streets? And then there's the shelter system itself, the place that should be the last safety net. Yet the data often shows available beds, while staff quietly admit the facilities are full, shaking the community's trust even further. I've heard many residents whisper that the system feels like a compass that's lost its direction. In moments like this, the need for addiction treatment programs and mental health awareness becomes even more urgent. Because if all we do is place someone in a small room and hope they somehow overcome their pain, then maybe we still don't truly understand what people experiencing Los Angeles homeless conditions need in order to stand back up. Out on the sidewalks of Los Angeles, the crisis doesn't look like a chart. It looks like a face. And if you listen long enough, the numbers we quote, 70,000+ people without a stable place to sleep, start to sound like individual names you could almost remember. Take a family like Maria's. She worked full-time at a grocery store her husband drove for a ride-share app. When their rent went up by a few $100s a month, they stretched every bill until there was nothing left to stretch. One missed paycheck, a medical bill, a broken car, and suddenly they were sleeping in that car on a side street, hoping no one would knock on the window at 3 a.m. We talk about first-time homelessness as a category, but for people like them, it feels more like falling through a trap door in the middle of an ordinary life. How many families in Los Angeles are just one bad month away from the same thing? Then there's James, a Vietnam-era veteran now in his 70s. He did everything this country asked of him, came home, worked construction, paid taxes. Years later, after a back injury, some pain pills, and a divorce, the bottom fell out. A city outreach team finally helped him into one of those hotel rooms funded under the emergency programs. He told a volunteer, "This is the first door I've been able to lock in years." Think about that for a second, the first lock in years. And yet not every solution feels like a solution. Some people moved into tiny home villages, describe them as cold, flimsy, crowded with rules that make them feel more like they're being managed than helped. A few quietly walk away and go back to a tent on the sidewalk where at least they feel in control of their own space. That makes a lot of folks angry. Why would you leave housing and go back to the street? But maybe the better question is, if our shelters and tiny homes were truly livable, truly dignified, would people be so quick to leave? These stories don't fit neatly into political talking points. They're messy, uncomfortable, and deeply human. And whether we admit it or not, the way Los Angeles chooses to treat Maria James, and the thousands like them, says something about all of us. The future of Los Angeles feels uncertain in a way that's both hopeful and unsettling, especially when we look closely at the Los Angeles Homeless 2025 numbers and realize how fragile this progress really is. Yes, the city has seen its first 2-year decline in homelessness in more than a decade, and that alone is a remarkable shift. Yet as I read through new reports and talk with people working on the ground, I can't shake the feeling that this turning point could easily slip away. After all, thousands of families are still just one missed paycheck or one lost subsidy away from losing their homes. And with federal cuts threatening support for nearly 5,000, 7,000 households, how long can this fragile improvement truly last? What makes the future even more complicated is the landscape of services itself. The expansion of harm reduction services and street-based mental health teams has helped many people stabilize, at least for a while. These teams were a major reason the count of people sleeping outside dropped by nearly 17.5%, something the city hadn't seen in years. But I keep asking myself, can these gains survive if the funding dries up or public pressure shifts? And more importantly, what happens to the people who have nowhere else to go when the political winds change again? Los Angeles stands at a quiet crossroads right now. On GA to the numbers look better. The official count says homelessness in the city is down about 3 to 4% street. Homelessness is down around 17%. And yet more than 72,000 of our neighbors in the county still fall asleep in shelters, tents, cars, or on bare sidewalks every single night. So honestly, how much victory can we claim when an entire small city is still living outside? At the same time, local leaders warn that if federal rental support dries up, another 5,000 to 7,000 households could be pushed over the edge. Tiny home villages and emergency hotels are praised as success stories, but many people quietly drift back to the street because the help stops too soon. That raises a hard question. Are we truly solving a crisis, or just managing it, so the rest of us can feel more comfortable? In the end, you and I both know this Los Angeles will be judged less by its speeches and more by whether those 72,000 human beings finally get a real front door and a key of their own.